You're listening to The New Paris. I'm your host, Lindsay Tremuta. What if Made in France for Crafts could be a form of activism? Paramaz, a leather workshop, boutique, and cafe in the first arrondissement, is essentially doing just that. I'm joined today by the co-owner, Marianna Stepanian, whose journey from diplomacy at UNESCO and the Dutch Embassy to the workbench of this local craft boutique offers a fascinating look at cultural preservation in action. We discuss how she and her partner Hagop are reviving the intimate maker-client relationship just steps away from Paris's luxury giants, the vital role their space plays in highlighting Armenian heritage, especially during turbulent times, and why the city is finally embracing the beauty of a multifunctional space where you can witness a bag or a belt being stitched while enjoying your espresso. Marianna, welcome to the show.
Hello, Lindsay. Thank you so much.
I'm so excited. This has been on my mind for a long, long time. And, you know, because of the nature of your work, I wasn't ever sure when would be a good time. And I think now it's a good time for a number of reasons. As I told listeners in the introduction, you have been working as a diplomat, essentially, right? You worked for the Dutch Embassy.
Exactly.
And you've represented their interest at UNESCO. How does that change your experience with Paris? I mean, had you been in Paris before you moved here for the mission?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, first of all, thank you, Lindsay, for inviting me. This is my very first podcast, as I told you. But as I also told you, I keep sending voice notes. Like I'm that person that sends like 10-minute voice notes to everyone. So I'm kind of used to it. But yeah, I'm very, very happy to be here. Thank you so much. So before moving to Paris to work in the world of diplomacy, I moved here when I was a student in 2015 to study, actually. I studied law in Amsterdam, and when I moved to Paris through this like Erasmus exchange, I fell in love with Paris. I fell in love with the energy of the city. I felt like, I grew up in a very small conservative town. As someone with a non-Western migration background, as you can imagine, I always felt like an outsider, of course. So when I moved to Paris, I just felt this almost overwhelming feeling of freedom, and this access to art and culture and political debate and and the amount of the diversity of communities that you meet here. So that was during my studies, the first time that I came to Paris, fell in love. It was a 6-month exchange. And I went back to the Netherlands to write my thesis. And I thought, okay, before I graduate, I need to go back one more time. I got addicted. I mean,
as you do.
I feel like it's a she, by the way.
Yes, she is. Yes,
she's a woman. She puts a spell on you in a way, and once that happens, you're like, oh my God, I have to go back.
I have to be here. Yeah.
Yeah. So I applied for an internship at the Dutch Embassy here in Paris because I thought, I always wanted to become a lawyer. Intellectual property. That's one of my specializations. And I always wanted to work with artists, with scientists, with writers, you name it. I think that also comes from, my background. I was born in the former Soviet Union. So my parents, my grandparents, they grew up in a pretty oppressive regime, pretty oppressive country, where scientists, artists, journalists, of course, they didn't have the freedom that we have right now. So I always felt so motivated and inspired by their stories. And also one of my great idols has always been Charles Carey. He's actually an Armenian-American lawyer of the Black Panthers during the 60s and 70s. Yeah, I've always felt so inspired by his story. So I always thought, okay, I'm gonna be a lawyer. I'm gonna fight injustice. I'm gonna study law, but at the same time, I have a very political background, of course, personal background. As an Armenian born during the Soviet Union, you grow up with the stories of the Armenian genocide, of ethnic cleansing, of war. Geographically, we're just doomed. We're either at war or surrounded by war, of course. And you have to learn how to deal with that. And in a very natural way, you become we don't have the privilege to, not think about politics.
Right,
So
right.
I come from a very political household, and the multiple languages that I speak, I always thought like, hey, maybe I should see what diplomacy is all about, So that was for me a way to go back to Paris also. To that's why I applied for the position for an internship at the Dutch embassy, and I got the internship. I was very lucky because François Hollande.
Yes.
Invited back then our king and queen, so they needed some extra help. So I moved back to Paris for 6 months, and that was just absolutely incredible. And I went back to the Netherlands, to The Hague, to work for an IP law firm. Very niche, very fantastic, but I miss diplomacy so much. And I was very lucky because I had the chance to move back, so third time, to indeed work for the Dutch embassy, first as spokesperson. I was also working on initiatives in the field of cultural diplomacy, and then economic diplomacy, and then my 4-year mission at UNESCO, indeed.
And that's when you showed me the behind the scenes of UNESCO a little bit. I got to have a tour, my first.
Yes.
After all these years, which is in the 7th arrondissement.
Exactly, 7th, 15th. Yeah.
And at the time, you had put on a really beautiful, necessary photo exhibition on women journalists and the dangers for them in working in their field. But you were also connected to other things while working at UNESCO. And there's obviously an Armenian community here.
Exactly.
There's a Lebanese community here. There's the overlap of both.
Exactly.
Because there are a lot of Armenian Lebanese. And you started getting involved, helping out a project. You introduced me to this project called Paramaz.
Exactly.
Which at the time was a workshop hidden from the public. You needed to know it was there. You needed to have a booking to do a workshop with Hagop, the founder. And then you both worked together to take that sort of out of the shadows and into a brick and mortar space, which has an amazing location right near the Bourse de Commerce.
Very lucky.
Around the corner from Dream and Man, the roastery, near some fabulous restaurants. So how do you sort of combine these interests? Is there actually an overlap between diplomacy work and what you and Hagop have ultimately created at a leather goods workshop, boutique, and coffee shop, which we'll talk about?
Yeah. So Paris has never just been, a backdrop to my work in diplomacy. Outside of work, I got to meet just the most incredible people. Like yourself, my dear.
We met through coffee.
Yes,
we
exactly.
Really did. I've met a lot of people, honestly.
Through
coffee shops and
through coffee shops, and also Instagram, right?
Yes,
it has helped so much.
Yeah.
I've met artists, creatives, journalists. Just Paris attracts just the most diverse people, not in terms of just their personal background, but also their professional background, their skills, their interests, and so. My life in Paris was always an extension of my work in diplomacy. So with regard to Paramaz, what Paramaz is for me, it's an extension of my diplomatic work. And I know that a lot of people will think like, oh, that's a bit far-fetched, but let me explain. So as you mentioned, first Paramaz, it's a house of leather craftsmanship. It's founded by Hagop. Hagop is an Armenian from Lebanon, from Burj Hamud, which is basically Little Armenia. It's created from exile. So during the Armenian genocide, a lot of Armenians settled there and created their little Armenia. It's a center of craftsmanship, especially leather craftsmanship. So Hagop learned the craft in his family atelier. And I don't have a similar background, but both of my grandfathers were shoemakers and leather workers. So I also come from a family, of people passionate about leather work. And for both of our families, it was a way of survival. It was a way of, showing keeping our identity and showing that we're here, showing our cultural heritage, because that's all, of course, linked to each other. And so when I met Jacob in this very small atelier, 19 square meters, hidden.
It was so small.
Very small, hidden, in the 6th arrondissement. I don't know what happened, Lindsay. I think it's the ornaments, like the Armenian things that he had, in the atelier, the smell of the leather, just seeing his incredible savoir-faire, because he started working at the age of like 14, 15.
Yeah.
So we have a savoir-faire that goes back to 1995. And when I was there, something happened. I think it planted a seed that moment that I walked into the atelier, and I thought, okay, why are you hiding in the 6th? Why does no one, well, not no one, but like more people should know about this?
So you were the instigator to a bigger space.
I kind of was.
Yeah, that's okay. You can
kind
own
of
that.
was, but I must say that, Jacob always wanted to grow. Like, one of the things I really respect about him is he's like, we're doing it. We're doing it. I don't care. We're just going to do it. And I feel like that's also something so Armenian, the resilience. They're like, once we want something, we just go and we get it. And I think that also comes from survival,
Of course.
Obviously. So when I met him, I thought, yeah, I'm just going to help him, from the sidelines. It was just a passion project, as in, I'm not gonna be involved as like a partner or whatever. But naturally, obviously, I noticed that the way we were working together was very complementary. And I noticed quite quickly that Paramaz wasn't just about fine leather goods. It was about dialogue. It was about mutual understanding. It was about creating that connection with the customer. It was about representation and preservation of our cultural heritage, of our savoir-faire, of our know-how. So when we got that bigger space, I thought we have to go all the way. Not just, sell bags and belts. We have to make sure that we keep the atelier open to bring people in, to kind of contribute to this movement of slow fashion, to make people aware, how are your bags made? How are your belts made? Who is the person making your the items that you buy? Because I feel like fashion has been so dehumanized.
Absolutely.
Like many things, I mean, very often, when you buy something, 9 out of 10 times, you only know the salesperson, right? And I mean, if you buy something online, you don't get to. There's no human. There's no human connection at all. So what we're trying to do with Paramaz is basically an extension of my diplomatic work. Because what is diplomacy, right? I mean, there are multiple forms of diplomacy. There's economic diplomacy. There's cultural diplomacy. If we look at cultural diplomacy, that comes very close to what we do at Paramaz. As I mentioned. Well, what is it? First of all, it's something that we lack so much nowadays, unfortunately, with the state of the world. It's just catastrophe. But as I mentioned, it's mutual understanding, it's connection, it's dialogue, it's visibility, it's representing cultures that have been, appropriated in a bad way, underrepresented. So, and that's what we are trying to do at Paramaz, and we're also, and of course, because we've worked together on this beautiful exhibition. I guess we're going to talk about it later. We also use the space because we're so privileged and lucky to have this space in the center of Paris. We use the space to also, as a bit of a, stage for other creatives, for other entrepreneurs, creative entrepreneurs, especially women entrepreneurs. Artists, writers, it's so important for us to create this connection, to create this dialogue, and create a community of mutual understanding where, there isn't a culture that dominates, but there's a fusion of cultures, there's collaboration, and that's what we want to do with Paramaz.
Yeah, there's so many layers.
Many layers.
I obviously got to see that because of the exhibition you mentioned that I was asked to moderate. So there was a talk associated with the exhibition that was around Armenian heritage and cleansing, loss of cultural heritage and identity, and that was put on with Artworks Project, based in the U.S. And to see the people who came out and gives them a chance, obviously, to learn and to connect with this material, but also to understand what Paramaz is. And I think the best spaces in Paris today sort of bridge retail and cultural center and are trying to do multiple things, which, I mean, coming from Amsterdam, was already something that I think people were accustomed to. Yeah. Maybe not cultural programming, but certainly the coffee shop meets retail environment. And people have tried that for so long in Paris. And, 8 to 10 years ago, it was a real struggle. People were like, I don't understand what's happening here. What are you?
Yeah.
And I think, I'm assuming you came out at the right time with this, where the consumer and the Parisian is already a little bit more educated. Do you still get people walking in wondering what's happening?
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's just, I can write a book about this. For us, the cafe is not an add-on. It's part of our identity. Coffee plays such an important role in the French culture, Lebanese culture, Armenian culture. It's part of hospitality, of course, but also, if we look at Jacob's story, he always told me that there was always this coffee corner in his parents' atelier. There was always someone sitting in the corner sipping a coffee.
Oh, how funny!
Talking about like business ideas and about their new bag and their shoes, etc., etc. So, and he was always the one, of course, serving a coffee. And same for me. Whether it was family gatherings or coffee, it was such an important pillar in connecting with people. And at Paramaz, with Paramaz, we want to offer this experience. It's not just about, coming in and buying a bag and then leaving. And obviously with coffee, we get to do that in a very warm and human way. And I think it's also, speaking about this movement of slow fashion, I think it contributes to that. You walk in, you take your time, you grab a coffee. For some people, it's still confusing, obviously, because they think, like, we had questions like, do we have to buy something first, in order to get a cup of coffee? We have people walking in who actually think that it's just a cafe with some kind of interesting pop-up touch. Exactly. So they get a coffee and they're like, oh, you're an atelier? Can I have a look? And then they end up, talking with our artisans for like an hour, and then they buy something. Even if it's like something small, they leave with a souvenir of, I hope, a great experience.
And that's actually quite rare because, there's obviously in the last 10 years, the Made in France has been a big topic of conversation. The sort of fine print on that, however, is that there's a way to make it look like it's all made in France if the last step in the process has, the label. If the label was made and attached in France, then, so it's kind of hard for the consumer to really know. But when something is made right in front of you, which essentially is you're among the very few who do that.
Yes.
And give people an opportunity to see. And you run workshops that people can sign up for, which is a separate piece. You're taking slow fashion to a different level. And that can only happen when you're building it that way with that in mind from the start.
Absolutely.
It's really hard for these big companies to backtrack and become that way down the road. And the only one I can think of that sort of has this is Veja, because they were built small with ethics and sustainability in mind, and they have a cobbler workshop. And, they have these ways for people to get an understanding of how things are made, but it's so rare.
It's very rare, and it's hard, I must say. I'm not gonna, I'm not gonna romanticize it. We are an independent atelier. There's no middlemen, no investors, but from the start, Jacob and I, we said to each other, we're going to do everything to keep this atelier open and accessible, to, let people in, to truly, represent what Made in France stands for.
Sure.
Because as you mentioned, it's so misleading. It's
really
a marketing
is.
thing,
It
of course,
is.
not for everyone, not for every brand, obviously. But yeah, for us, it's just very straightforward. You walk in, you see where your bag, I keep mentioning bag, but it can be whatever leather good is made. You get to know the artisan. And I feel like once we know how something is made, because we're not experts, right? Most of us, we have no idea how the shoes, the bags that we wear, the clothes that we wear are actually made. And I feel like once you know that, there is automatically, hopefully, I hope, you have more respect for what you wear and what you buy. And I think that's something that we need. We need to understand the value of the things that we carry on us, on our bodies, the shoes that we wear, etc. And, for example, there's this, France is doing a great job with all these, anti-waste laws.
Yes.
Where you can go to a shoemaker and you can pay like a reasonable price, right? To make sure that you don't have to throw away your shoes, that you can reuse the things that you already have. And these policies are incredible. They are targeted, they're very concrete, and they change people's behavior. But I think we also need a cultural change. We need a cultural change in the sense that, as I said, we need to really, truly value the items that we buy and the things that we wear. And I think what helps, as I mentioned, is understanding how they are made and where they are made. But I can see that it's also difficult for consumers because, as you said, we are actually one of the few open ateliers here in Paris, maybe the only one, where you can just walk in and truly buy something where it's made.
On the premises.
On the premises, exactly,
yeah.
exactly.
And do people, the clients you have coming in, I'm sure they ask about, so where the leathers come from, how do you choose them? Is that all France-based as well?
All France-based, yeah. We work with local businesses, so local suppliers, French suppliers for multiple reasons, because it helps us to, track the whole supply chain and make sure that that's transparent. But it's also our way of supporting our counterparts, our, the small businesses here. So most of our leather is cow's leather. We don't use exotic leather for our collection. In general, I mean, for me, I think we all should eat less meat less dairy. And I mean, it's a bit dangerous to say that here in France, but
French and Dutch, less dairy.
And I know, crazy, right? I know.
Tricky.
I know, very tricky, very, very tricky. But as long as we do eat meat and consume dairy, I mean, leather is a byproduct of that industry, right? So what we are just trying to do is to use that byproduct and create something that is durable, that you can repair, that lasts for such a long time. Because one of the things that we also do at Paramaz is we offer repair services. It's
huge.
It's very, very important to us. And Lindsay, customers coming in with just the best stories about, their grandmother's bag and the emotional value.
So not necessarily bags that were made at Paramaz. So
absolutely.
Their own heirlooms that they're bringing in to get repaired. Excellent.
We want to walk the talk, For us, longevity, durability, sustainability, it's important. So we accept any brands. When you have a bag that belonged to your grandmother or whoever and you want to fix it, we can do that. And just to see how leather can be, repaired and you can
revived,
give it
right?
Exactly, and you can give it a completely new life. That's something incredible. So we truly, truly believe in the durability of our products and the durability of leather goods. So
that's already huge because this is for me, always the place that has been about craftsmanship, but there are so many signs and examples that challenge that as well. Shein coming into BHV and...
But the
response was, there was a lot of backlash. But when you listen to the people who say they don't care, this is all they can afford, and I think that's a symptom of thinking you need things quickly, a certain amount, a certain number of items per month to feel like you are not falling behind. This fast consumption and production, too much production, too many products, right? So you're doing something that is so vital because the examples of that are getting fewer and fewer in number, right?
In combination with the fact that, leather craftsmanship, there are not many people who master the craft anymore.
Well, no, think about all the cobblers that have closed shop.
It's horrible.
When they retire, who is taking over that work? And I had a like mid-luxury bag that I had bought vintage, and within a year, it was vintage, but it was unworn. So new, but vintage.
Yeah.
I guess it was new, but used in theory. Mm-hmm. And within a year, like the clasp of the strap just broke while I was traveling on an airplane. And so the bag was unusable because it required the strap. So I just found myself carrying around this bag under my arm in Rome, which was not the place for that.
No.
And I took it to someone who does repairs on luxury goods. And she says, you wouldn't believe how many problems people are finding with these items. I had done this story about vintage luxury and why people are turning to secondhand because the cost of new bags is extortionate, but also the hardware is not the same and the quality is not the same. And so you have perhaps a revival of some of these repair shops just to be able to help people use the bags that, should be holding up after a very little amount of wear. And so, I mean, I'm also the one to say, like, skip those houses and go to the people who are, physically doing it. And, you're less likely to get this sort of degrading quality. But people will do what they're going to do.
Of course.
But just to say it's like we're both expecting a lot and needing to understand that we can repair things. And so these realizations are happening for people at the same time. And so as long as they know you do this.
Yeah.
And you have this vision and this focus, hopefully, consciousness is going to change. Also for just the sheer fact of affordability.
Absolutely.
What are you going to replace a bag every year?
Absolutely. I mean, and I do understand that it's very difficult, with social media and everything that we see, but that's why I believe we need a cultural change, right? And I think that really I'm a huge advocate for implementing these points that you've mentioned into education, right? To teach our children, the younger generation, how to take care of their stuff and also to be a little bit more conscious about how they spend their money and what they spend their money on. I think that's so incredibly, incredibly important. And I mean, what we're doing with Paramaz, it's not as if, we sat down, we had a business plan and we're like, okay, what do we need to change in this world? And, it's not part of that. It's just part of our identity. It's part of our, if I look at my grandparents, my parents, they've always taught me, you have to have respect. It's a form of respect, right? For the people that make the goods, be curious, respect for your clothes. I mean, my grandmother, if you look into her closet, like, she has just the most beautiful pieces, the way she takes care of them, and she always tells me, yeah, I bought this there and that person made this jacket for me. So, and that's, going back to this feeling connected to the person, to the artisan making the items that you buy. It's so important, and I think it's part of this cultural shift that we need. And I really hope that with Paramaz we contribute to that.
I think you are, and also I'm sure you were told the same thing I have been told, which is you can make choices with your wallet, and they're political choices as well.
Everything is political.
Well, yes,
Absolutely
I mean,
everything.
There are people on the internet who don't want to acknowledge that that's true, but literally the food we eat, everything is. I guess my final question would be, how does the neighborhood that the shop and workshop is in, how does that help support or further what you're doing? Have you been quite embraced by the local businesses?
Absolutely. As you know, I mean, we're surrounded by the luxury giants, of course, and we're in good company, but you know, we're unique in what we do, and we stay very close to our identity, to our heritage, to who we are. And at the beginning, of course, I mean, it's the first arrondissement, you know, people were like, who are you guys? Paramaz? What is that? How do you pronounce it? What does it mean? Oh, you're selling bags, but I don't know this brand. But what we always try to do with Jacob, we always, and together with our team, you know, dialogue, taking time for the people who pass by, especially for those who are a little bit confused. You know, we always, when we see people passing by and they're a bit scared to walk in because they're not sure, is it like an atelier? Can I just step in? Is it open for public? We get out, we start a conversation, we talk with them. Again, I keep repeating, we create this, you know, human connection. And that has helped us tremendously. And of course, the mix of, you know, the locals and the tourists, it's still quite a touristy area, has helped us a lot.
Yeah, of
absolutely.
course.
No, absolutely. Yeah.
Well, I mean, I hope everyone takes the time to at least go in, have a coffee.
Thank you so much.
Get to know you guys. Hagup is so warm and wonderful. And obviously, like you said, and we've said, and I kept using the word bag, but obviously you do so much more than that. And there are small leather goods and belts and keychain accessories and things like that. So just see what they're doing and stop by, have a coffee. And they need to look at the tapestry that you have hanging next to the
180-year-old, yes, carpet, Armenian carpet.
Okay,
it's
an
a
Armenian carpet hung as a wall piece,
centerpiece, absolutely.
right near right where you can have one of the spots where you can sit and have a coffee, and it is just so striking, and I think it really finishes the space.
Thank you so much. It's a centerpiece. It's one of the first pieces that we bought. It's again a way to show, you know, that against all odds, we're here, and we are so extremely grateful that, you know, 2 immigrant kids get to run this business in the heart of Paris. And, you know, Lindsay, it's also, we invite people to walk in. It's not about buying. It's not about, you know, consuming coffee. As long as you're curious, as long as you just, you know, want to know what is our savoir-faire, you know, what is our culture? How do we merge the French, the Lebanese, the Armenian, but also all the different cultures that we invite to our space? How do we merge them? Maybe you want to learn how to make your own bag, as you said, you know, or your own belt. We offer workshops as well. Everyone, absolutely everyone is welcome at Paramaz, whether you have a lot to spend or not, or as I said, whether you're just curious. For us, people walking in is just the biggest compliment, really.
And the beginning of hopefully a conversation, which we need more of also.
Absolutely.
Marianna, thank you so much.
Thank you, Lindsay. Thank you so much.
That's the show for today. If you're listening on Spotify, be sure to check out the poll related to this episode by scrolling down in your app. There are more exciting conversations to come this season, so I hope you'll subscribe or share the show with a friend if you've been enjoying what you've heard so far. As always, you can find more from me at lindsaytremuta.com and at the New Paris Dispatch on Substack. À très bientôt.